Returning to the four Gospels. According to the Gospel of Matthew, Jesus undergoes persecution from a rival king and has to flee into Egypt. Not the life of your average person. While, according to the Gospel of Luke, Jesus lives the life of a common man. Just like any average Jewish male, Jesus undergoes the rite of circumcision on the 8th day and receives his name. As the firstborn, is dedicated at the temple after the days of Mary's purification, according to the law of Moses, and at the age of 12 experiences his first Passover, the life of an ordinary Jewish male by all accounts. Why? Why all this? As was said before, the answer is found in Revelation. And the first beast was like a lion, and the second beast like a calf, and the third beast had a face as a man, and the fourth beast was like a flying eagle. Revelation 4:7. The Gospels then are Matthew's, the lion; Mark's, the calf; Luke's, the man; and John's, the eagle. The lion being king, the calf being servant sacrifice, the man being man, and the eagle being God. The four aspects of Christ: king, servant sacrifice, man, and God. Recall the connection of these four creatures to the sanctuary. The four standards of the camp of Israel in the wilderness wanderings. Not only are they aspects of Christ, but also aspects of his people. Returning to the four Gospels, we now have an explanation for some of the features of the Gospels of Mark and John. Mark's lack of a genealogy. For animals, it isn't noteworthy. Mark's failure to mention the birth. For animals, once again, it isn't noteworthy. John's lack of a genealogy. God doesn't have one. John's failure to mention the birth. God, once again, doesn't have one. And what of the 3-to-1 split? It can now be seen to arise naturally. 3 earthly creatures, the lion, the calf, and the man, and 1 heavenly creature, the eagle. But a question arises. It is obvious that Matthew is the lion, king, and Luke is the man, a common man. But how do we know Mark's Gospel is the calf, servant, sacrifice, and John's Gospel is the eagle, God? Let's examine the evidence. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. All things were made by him, and without him was not anything made that was made. John 1:1-3. Returning to the four Gospels, the Gospel of John declares Jesus to be the Word, God. Then said the Jews unto him, Thou art not yet 50 years old, and hast thou seen Abraham? Jesus said unto them, Verily, verily, I say unto you, before Abraham was, I am. Then took they up stones to cast at him. But Jesus hid himself, and went out of the temple, going through the midst of them, and so passed by. John 8:57-59. So Jesus calls himself, I am. Unless we be tempted to pass that utterance of Christ's off as having little significance, the Jews' reaction to it needs to be re-examined. How did they understand this declaration? Then took they up stones to cast at him. They were going to kill him for a little I am. And God said unto Moses, I am that I am. And he said, Thus shalt thou say unto the children of Israel, I am hath sent me unto you. Exodus 3:14. So with that little I am, Jesus declared himself to be the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob, the God of the Israelites, the God of the Jewish nation. No wonder they wanted to stone him. Returning to the four Gospels, the Gospel of John declares Jesus to be the I am, Yahweh, God. The Gospel of John therefore definitely declares itself to be the Eagle God Gospel, the Gospel which most directly declares Jesus to be God. To get a feel for the Gospel of Mark, we will now look at its content in terms of parables and miracles in comparison to that of the other two synoptic Gospels, Matthew and Luke. First, the parables. Matthew's Gospel contains 24 out of the 44 parables recorded by the Gospel writers, or 55%. Mark's Gospel contains 8 out of the 44, or 18%, and Luke's Gospel contains 30 out of the 44, or 68%. Here's an enumeration of the parables in the four Gospels. Returning to the four Gospels, now the miracles. Matthew's Gospel contains 20 out of the 35 miracles recorded by the Gospel writers, or 57%. Mark's Gospel contains 18 out of the 35, or 51%, and Luke's Gospel contains 20 out of the 35, or 57%. Here's an enumeration of the miracles in the four Gospels. The information has been arranged to highlight the three synoptic Gospels, as John's, the red, is rather independent of the others. Returning to the four Gospels. Note that the Gospel of Mark has a significantly fewer number of parables, the intellectual, compared with the other synoptic Gospels, while it has a roughly equivalent number of miracles, the physical. The Gospel of Matthew contains the very significant Sermon on the Mount, as does the Gospel of Luke, while it is absent from the Gospel of Mark. The Gospel of Matthew contains Christ's eulogy for John the Baptist, as does the Gospel of Luke, while it is absent from the Gospel of Mark. The Gospel of Mark is characteristically less intellectual than the other Gospels, an action Gospel as opposed to an intellectual one. Similar to an animal, perhaps? So we have the four Gospels, explained by the four creatures of Revelation 4:7. But Revelation has more.